Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the quantum mechanics.
Also known as the justified ancients of woo-woo.
If you're interested in the paranormal and the high strangeness, we're the podcast for you.
Whether you're a believer, a doubter, or somewhere in between.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Peter.
And we are the Quantum Mechanics. We're back. Special thank you to Jane for joining as a Patreon this week.
Lovely. Patreon.com/TQM pod. All our Patreons help support us. You get our episode a week early. You get access to the exclusive episode, Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop Discord server. We do a lot of posting on there, a bit of chatting. So, but mainly it helps support us. So thanks for joining. What was it with Jane? Was it
Jane?
Yes,
thank you very much.
Welcome, Jane.
Yes. You know what you can buy for how much it costs to be a Patreon for a month here?
Go on.
Well, you can buy 3/4 of a milkshake, as I discovered yesterday.
What flavour?
Chocolate.
Would you go?
Chocolate. I asked my partner to go and get me a chocolate milkshake from Sainsbury's. £5 it was. £5.
I like a malted shake.
I like a malted shake too. Hard to get though.
Yeah.
In this part of the world, hard to get.
Yeah. Well, they disappear quite quickly, don't they? That was my really crap attempt at a segue.
Oh, you want to get us onto the paranormal?
Yeah, why not? So, yes, this week. So I want to look at cases, Ben, of people who've disappeared in strange circumstances. Now, we've got cases of people vanishing into thin air while people watched, believe it or not. Cases where whole towns or settlements vanished without a trace. And you're going to love this, Ben, because I know it's one of your favourite topics. Later in the episode, we're going to be looking at JOTTS, objects that disappear, then reappear, and a man who thinks he's solved why this happened. And Ben, it's not what you might think.
JOTTS are one of my all-time favourite things. That and werewolves and werewolf scat. My three favourite things.
I love that. These are a few of my favourite things. When the werewolf poops. No, I'm going to give that a rest. Let's start with people before we get onto the JOTTS. So around the world, millions of people disappear every year. So around 600,000 people are reported missing each year in the United States and around 170,000 in the UK.
Wow, that's way more than I thought. 170,000?
Yeah, 170. I mean, many are found within 48 hours. Many don't want to be found. So, it depends on your definition of missing, I guess. And, of course, there are those cases that involve foul play. But, Ben, it is something else when someone disappears right before your very eyes. Which leads us to the strange case of David Lang. David Lang was a farmer who lived in Gallatin, Tennessee, in the United States. On September the 23rd, 1880, David and his family were walking on their farmland. The family were walking in a field. David was about 6 steps ahead of the others, and then he suddenly disappeared in full view of his family.
So just blinked out of existence?
Yep. 1 second he was walking ahead of them in an empty field. The next second, gone.
Now look, I can do this trick. If I really need a wee, I can dive into a bush.
Yeah, well, there was no bushes. He was in the middle of an empty field.
Wow.
So David's wife screamed. The children froze and stood in shock. A man named Judge Peck and his brother-in-law happened to be riding by the field in their horse-drawn buggy. And they saw the commotion. They jumped out of their buggy and raced across the field to join the family. Then the 5 people, so that's David Lang's wife and children, plus this guy, Judge Peck, and his brother-in-law, they stood on the spot where seconds earlier David Lang had been and then had suddenly just vanished into thin air.
That's so lucky that there was, somebody of good standing going past, because I can imagine she could have been accused of murder.
All kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
As you asked the question, there were no trees, no bushes, and maybe more importantly, there were no holes in the ground that he could have fallen through, because that kind of was the first thing that jumped into my mind, right?
So did they attempt to, search? I mean, I don't even...
Yeah, they did, yes. I mean, the grown-ups began searching the field and surrounding area for David Lang. Lang's wife was so distraught she was taken home. Neighbours spread the alarm, and by nightfall a group of locals carrying lanterns began searching every inch of the field and the nearby forest. They looked for holes or anything that could explain what happened, but found nothing. David Lang was nowhere to be found. There is a really weird bit to this. After a short period of time, the grass where David Lang was last seen turned yellow in a 15-foot diameter circle.
Ooh.
Which kind of suggests some kind of energy. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, like, I don't know, it's almost like he's been beamed up.
Yeah. Well, David Lang never returned. No body was ever found.
Back.
No. Several months after he literally vanished, Lang's children reported they could hear their father's faint voice calling out for help when they visited the spot of his disappearance.
Now, that is something we hear on those David Paulides stories.
It is. I mean, I guess you can look at that two ways. Something paranormal or some kind of expression of grief, you could say, But still, odd. Within a few weeks, they said the voice had also faded into nothing.
I remember some of those cases where it's sort of described as the voice on the wind.
Right, yeah. We've got another one coming up a little bit like that, actually.
That's mental, that he just disappeared into nothing.
Nothing.
Presumably, I mean, the coroner had to declare him dead.
Well, let's dig into, because there is a sceptical side to this story. Because, is this a real story? Is it too good to be true as a paranormal tale? As you can imagine, it's had a lot of attention over the years. It was published in the 1950s in Stranger Than Science and by Harold Wilkins in Strange Mysteries of Our Time in 1958, both publications claiming it was a true story. Researchers, however, and historians have not found details of the case in newspapers from the time, nor have they found David Lang on census records.
Ah, okay.
Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a hoax, but it does seem that the story may have gained larger fame from a man called Stuart Palmer, who was a mystery novel writer and journalist. So in July of 1953, Palmer published an account of the case in Fate magazine, which it's a bit like Flying Saucer Review, but wider paranormal, I think. It does do UFOs and other stuff. Now, Palmer insisted he was told the story by Sarah Lang, the daughter of the man who disappeared, who saw her father disappear, basically. But there is speculation that Palmer actually took the idea from a short story written by Ambrose Bierce in a collection of stories called Can Such Things Be, which was published in 1893. Now, one of the stories in this collection is titled The Difficulty of Crossing a Field. And it bears a striking resemblance to the case of David Lang. The author, Stuart Palmer, who published this thing, insists that the fictional work of Ambrose Bierce, published in 1893, was inspired by the real case. So, yes, this short story was a fictional piece of work by Ambrose Bierce, but Palmer, who wrote the 1953 version, which he claimed was coming directly from someone who was a witness there, the daughter of David Lang. So he's saying the fictional thing was inspired by the real case originally. So the jury's out, I guess, on whether this is a piece of fictional yellow journalism or a true paranormal tale.
It's annoying. It seems like it's lost to the mists of time.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
It's a great story, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare to I don't think I've ever come across a story that's claiming to be true paranormal where somebody's actually seen somebody disappear like that.
No.
Not I mean, there's plenty of creepypasta type stuff out there that does it, but yeah, interesting. Well, another case that has a similar feel is that of the disappearance of Oliver Larch. It was Christmas Eve in South Bend, Indiana. The year is 1889. The Larch family were having a Christmas party. Snow lay on the ground, heavy snow clouds hung low in the sky. The overcast outdoors was in sharp contrast to the house itself, which was radiating light and heat from the festivities that were taking place inside. Now, 11-year-old Oliver Larch was making popcorn in the kitchen, and then he joined the rest of the family singing Christmas carols, which Oliver's mother was playing on the family's organ. I knew you were going to laugh at that point. Oliver's father asked the 11-year-old to fetch some water from the well outside. So the snow was about 6 inches deep. Oliver put on a warm coat and shoes, picked up a bucket and headed outside to the well. So this well's about 75 feet away from the house. After a few seconds, Mr. Larch and the others inside heard Oliver's screams. The boy was shouting, "Help me, help, they've got me, help." Mr. Larch threw open the door and he and his family rushed out into the snow. There they were met with a terrifying silence. Oliver was not there. In the few seconds that he left the house to head for the well outside, he was gone. Holding a lantern, Mr. Larch traced Oliver's footsteps in the snow. Now, he expected them to lead to the well, which he feared Oliver had fallen down in. You would think that, wouldn't you, right? But Oliver's footprints stopped halfway between the well and the house. Standing there in a confused state, they then heard Oliver's screams again.
Coming from above?
Yeah. They were not coming from the well or the forest. They were coming from overhead, from the sky above. Oliver was screaming the same refrain, "Help me, help, they've got me, help." The screams slowly faded away and Oliver was not seen again. Authorities were baffled by the case. There were no hot air balloons in the area, and even if they were, one couldn't have landed and taken off in the few seconds between Oliver leaving the house and disappearing.
I love that's where they went to. Probably a hot air balloon.
Well, the other theory, again, which doesn't hold because we're talking about an 11-year-old boy, there were some thoughts that maybe some kind of large bird of prey had carried the 11-year-old off, but not possible.
That's some big bird.
Yeah, not possible.
That's a thunderbird. That is and do we know that this happened?
Yeah, you've read my script here, haven't you, Ben? Well, like the previous story, skeptics point out that no newspapers from the time reference the case. There's no official record of it. However, with this one, especially in that area, many of the records were destroyed from that time period through fires and various other things. So that's not necessarily the biggest kind of put down of the story. But at the start of this story, I mentioned similarities between this case and the previous one we did of David Lang. That's not just because it involves a strange disappearance. So in the case of David Lang, he's in a field. I talked about how the legend may have come from a short story by author Ambrose Bierce. Well, the same might be true of this case, as it bears a striking resemblance to another of the author's short stories titled Charles Ashmore's Trail.
Okay.
So I'm
seeing a pattern.
Yeah, I mean, amazing to think that both these cases may have originated from the mind of the same author, if they're not true paranormal tales. I wonder if he had any idea that these stories from the late 1800s, we'd be talking about them today and they've become folklore legends.
Yeah.
Odd to think, isn't it?
I mean, the thing is, there's enough credibility within the narrative to kind of make it feel like it could be real, because this is the missing 411. This is exactly the kind of things that we see with that, albeit there tend to be more levels of high strangeness around it, and occasionally remains are found. But this is, it's very... I don't know. I suppose they're kind of shocking stories. I mean, when you say, they could have derived from these stories, I think we forget there was a mountain of these short stories that were published in newspapers and in penny dreadfuls, and there was a huge demand for it.
There was, and I mean, that's interesting with Ambrose Bierce, because not only was he a fictional writer, but he was a journalist as well.
Right.
Which I think is this kind of blurred thing of, is this his fictional work? Is this coming from his journalistic investigations? Is it yellow journalism? So there's a real uncertainty around it. But there is a really strange denouement relating to the author and journalist Ambrose Bierce. He also disappeared in strange circumstances.
For real?
For real. So in October of 1913, the 71-year-old Bierce decided to take a tour of Civil War battlefields before crossing the border into Mexico to catalogue the ongoing revolution in the country. But he vanished without a trace and was never heard from again. Now, there are a number of theories as to what happened to him. None of these are paranormal, but worth briefly exploring. The first theory is he took his own life. He'd suffered a great deal of loss. Both his sons had died young. One took his own life, the other dying of alcoholism. Bierce was also in physical pain, suffering from asthma and a brain injury sustained in the war. So this theory is he basically was this idea that he said he was going to document the revolution in Mexico was a cover for him wanting to end his life there.
Mm-hmm. Right, okay.
So that's theory one. The second theory was put forward by an American priest serving in Mexico who believed Bierce had been executed by Mexican authorities who believed him to be a spy.
Mm-hmm.
So convinced was the priest that he installed a gravestone in Sierra Majada Cemetery. So this gravestone reads, "Very trustworthy witnesses suppose that here lie the remains of Ambrose Gwinnett Bierce, 1842 to 1914. A famous American writer and journalist who, on suspicion of being a spy, was executed and buried at this place." So there is a gravestone there for him. Now, a less sensational theory suggests the author died of pneumonia while travelling back to the US. And this theory is championed by fellow journalist Jake Silverstein, who claims Bierce is buried in an unmarked grave in Texas. There is a less plausible theory that he's still alive, but that would make him about 150 years old. So we're not going with that one. But it's fascinating, though, isn't it? That a man famous for stories of mysterious disappearances would be the subject of the speculation himself.
Well, it does make me think that perhaps that idea that he went and took his own life mysteriously, that would sort of fit in with the narrative that he'd been putting forward for the rest of his life. So it's kind of makes sense.
So he's also rumoured to be buried in two separate places, one in Texas, one in Mexico. Interesting, I thought. Well, it's one thing for an individual to mysteriously disappear, but quite another for the inhabitants of a whole town to. Shall we look at the mystery of Roanoke Island?
I know something about this, but not very much.
Okay.
I didn't know the inhabitants disappeared. Okay.
Yeah, this story starts in the late 1500s when a ship full of English colonisers arrived on the shores of Roanoke Island, which later became part of North Carolina. Now, the colonisers had left England in April of 1587. There were 180 men, women and children who were travelling to the New World. They were led by Governor John White, who was accompanied by his daughter. Now, Roanoke Island was only supposed to be a stopping point before their final destination. So previously on that island, there had been an English military presence, but they had fought with native tribes and left. But the boat and its passengers were low on supplies, so had no choice and had to stop there. As the travellers stepped onto the shore, they were greeted by the sight of a skeleton left over from the previous military colonisation attempt. It wouldn't make you feel great, would it?
No, not really, no. Oh, look, it's Halloween. No, it's not.
So, yeah, as you can imagine, Ben, the group wanted to continue their journey, but the ship's captain refused, as continuing with the summer weather ending would be too dangerous. And they were low on supplies. So the decision was made to drop off the colonisers on the island, and the colony's governor would head back to England, pick up supplies and return as quickly as possible so they could continue their journey. Sounds like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. It's going to take some time, though.
Yeah, I think I did a little Google of this, a little AI of, in the 1500s, how long? It's probably 3 or 4 weeks back to England and then 3 or 4 weeks back again, something like that. If the weather's with you, depends.
Okay.
But anyway, leaving his daughter and his fellow travellers behind, Governor John White set off back to England for supplies, hoping to return in a few months. And that was the plan, but fate was to get in the way. After returning to England, John White found that the war had broken out between England and Spain, and that prevented his return to the colonists and his daughter. There's basically, there's a raging war going on, being fought mostly on the oceans. You can't just head off again. He did finally make it back to Roanoke Island with supplies 3 years after leaving them behind. So not a few months, but 3 years.
3 years. Yeah, they're going to think something's happened to him.
Well, what he found shocked him and created enduring mystery. Because what he found was nothing, or more accurately, no one. Governor White and his men searched, but there was no evidence of the colonists, either living or dead. The only sign that they had ever been there was a message carved on a wooden fence post with the word Croatoan on it. This was the only clue left behind. Now, before we get into that, let's look at some of the theories that circulated about the mystery. There was a paranormal theory to this. It involves the daughter of Governor White. So the story goes that his daughter Eleanor fell pregnant while on the island and gave birth to a daughter named Virginia. This angered the native tribe, for some reason not mentioned.
Yeah, what's it to do with them?
So they cursed the settlers, making them disappear off the face of the earth. I'll admit, Ben, there are a number of holes in that theory, are there not?
Yes.
Because, how would they know that she gave birth to a daughter named Virginia?
Yeah, that doesn't have any credibility, I don't think.
Yeah, we'll write that one off. The second theory, which was probably the most plausible at the time, was the native tribe had killed the settlers.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Given the hostile encounters with the military beforehand, you can see why that took hold. However, no remains of any of the settlers were found. Sure, I guess their bones could have been buried or destroyed, but why? I mean, we're talking about over 100 people and their belongings. There would be some sign, would there not?
You would think, yes.
Another theory is that the island was hit by a powerful hurricane and all the settlers were washed out to sea. Now, there was a recorded hurricane during the time period of Governor White's absence in England, but the evidence, or I guess lack of evidence on the ground, seems to rule out this theory. There were no signs of that, and there would be some remnants of, if the waters came in so far that they washed the whole colony out to sea, you would have some evidence.
Yeah, I would think so.
So let's return to the wooden sign with the words Croatoan carved on it. Now, before returning to England for supplies, Governor White had asked the colonists to try and leave behind a message if they had to abandon the island. Croatoan was the name of another island to the south of Roanoke. So, it looks like the colonists had built boats or rafts, abandoned Roanoke Island and headed to Croatoan, leaving that sign behind to say
this is where we're going to be. Yeah.
Right. As you can imagine, Ben, Governor White hastily set sail for Croatoan Island, but bad luck would strike him again, as a severe storm prevented him from making the journey and forced his ship back to England once more. White didn't have the funds or motivation to continue his search, and he died 16 years later, never knowing what happened to his daughter or the other colonists.
I can understand him running out of funds, but just going, oh, well, I tried once.
Yeah, I'm not going back.
Not going back for my daughter.
Yeah. Well, she'll be fine. So, did the settlers abandon Roanoke Island and head for Croatoan? If they did, it happened pretty soon after settling on the island. Spanish troops landed on the Roanoke Island 1 year after the settlers were dropped off, 2 years before Governor White returned, but the Spanish found nothing but abandoned huts. Whatever happened in the first year.
Right.
Now, in terms of searching for the settlers at Croatoan Island, surprisingly, no expeditions were sent. So you may think we'd never know whether they did make it there or not, right?
Well, presumably we've had a look now.
Well, modern archaeologists may have solved the mystery. 30 years of digs and investigation of sites on Croatoan Island, which is now called Hatteras Island, have found some amazing discoveries. Among and mixed with native tribe artefacts, they have found what look like the belongings of the settlers.
Ah.
These include a number of Elizabethan items. They include a woman's clothing clasp, a writing slate, a blacksmithing hammer scale, and Elizabethan borderware pottery fragments. So this is just mixed in with the native people's stuff. So not like they're living separately. So the theory is the colonists built boats while on Roanoke, set sail for the other island. On arriving, or maybe, I guess, over time, realising no one was coming for them, they just integrated with the indigenous tribes and lived out their life there.
Right. Okay. You would have thought that there would have been... the tribe would have had some memory of this.
Yeah, passed on.
Passed on, yeah.
But I think it was quite a remote place. So I think we're talking, probably took a good 100 years or whatever to anyone to actually visit that island again. So things could fade in that time, I guess.
And probably the biggest mystery remains of why they did it.
Yeah. Still no clarity on that at all. Well, there is another famous example of a whole town that disappeared, this time in Canada. In November of 1930, a Canadian fur trapper named Joe LaBelle was near Anjikuni Lake in the Northwest Territories. It was a freezing cold day, and the trapper knew he was able to find shelter at the nearby Inuit settlement. But when he arrived, he found the settlement completely abandoned. Not just abandoned, like really quickly abandoned. So he searched the area. The trapper found incomplete garments with needles still in them. So sewing still stopped halfway through. There was food hanging over, now cold obviously, but hanging over fire pits. No people or any sign of violence or conflict. There was a human grave that had been prepared with a stone circle, but nobody had been buried. Perhaps, Ben, the strangest part was a number of now deceased sled dogs still tied to their posts. So it's unthinkable that the Inuits would have abandoned their dogs, even if they had to leave in a hurry, right?
Yeah,
you just wouldn't do that, right? So the story has been linked to a possible mass UFO abduction. Interestingly enough.
Okay.
It was covered in Nigel Blundell and Roger Bohr's book, World Greatest UFO Mysteries, which includes a report from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who detailed seeing mysterious pulsating lights over Lake Anjikuni in the lead up to the disappearance. Now, these are trained observers, so the first thing that came into my head was, it's Northern Lights, right?
Sure, yeah.
But these guys knows what Northern Lights are like, and this was something more strange. These lights were described as being on the horizon. They were bluish and pulsating.
I mean, Northern Lights can look like that, but...
The Royal Canadian Mounted Police mistaken Northern Lights for something else possible, I guess. Obviously, it's not conclusive proof of mass alien abduction, but as you can imagine, it's added to the speculation. Now, Blundell and Bohr's book also includes witness testimony by another trapper called Armand Laurent and his sons. They allegedly watched a strange object in the sky flying towards Anjikuni Lake a few days before the people disappeared. They described this object as changing shape, transforming from a cylinder into a bullet-like shape. We've heard this before, right?
Yes.
And they said it was glowing brightly.
How many people went missing?
I'm not sure the whole settlement, but we're talking kind of, to my knowledge, again, it's really hard to pin this down because the numbers do vary when you do the research. I'm going to take an educated guess of about 40 or 50.
Okay, so a decent number.
Yeah. Now, skeptics write off the story as a hoax or an exaggeration, and I'll list why they say that. The sightings of this strange craft and the witness statements first came to light in Blundell and Bohr's book. They would say, I guess Blundell and Bohr would say, we found new witnesses. Skeptics would say, well, that's convenient, wouldn't they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the credibility of the trapper who originally reported the incident has also been questioned. He claimed he was an experienced trapper. However, he'd only got a hunting license the year of the incident. I mean, that isn't a smoking gun, but it does raise questions about his credibility. But
yeah, it does, yeah.
He might not, he just may have been one of those guys who went, well, I better get myself a license. I've been doing this for 20 years. Who knows? You know what I mean? It doesn't write him off, does it? Skeptics also questioned the credibility of the journalist who broke the story, a journalist who apparently was prone to exaggeration. There's a lot that's made of one of the pictures used in his original article was actually earlier than it was credited. That could have been a mistake, but that's led to suggestions of yellow journalism connected to the case.
Right, okay.
But, I guess all this was enough for the police to dismiss the incident as a hoax and close the case. Though the strange lights, which are detailed in the official report, have never been explained.
Okay.
So it's hard to know, isn't it? That in a way, that one's slightly more credible because it has reported at the time. It was reported by a journalist. But yeah, who knows? Interesting.
I like it. I mean, I think half of the mystery in here is if it is made up, why was it made up?
Yeah, what's to gain?
What's to gain? Yeah, I mean, it might just be a shaggy dog story around a campfire, but
Yeah.
No, I like it.
Well, certainly that was an unusual case. Not often you get a mass abduction of a whole community, but let's move on to a reported UFO encounter and disappearance that's a little more traditional, let's say, but no less mysterious. You probably know of this one, Ben, the disappearance of Fred Valentich.
Oh, yes, this is a good one.
So Valentich was an Australian pilot. So on October the 21st, 1978, he took off from Moorabbin Airport just after 6 p.m. His destination was King Island. He was flying solo in a light airplane he had rented, a single-engine Cessna 182L. Its registration was VHDSJ, if you're interested in that level of detail.
Absolutely, I am. Just writing that down.
Good. Around 7 p.m, Fred was flying over the Bass Strait when he saw something flying above him. He radioed Melbourne Air Flight Services. Right, I've got some audio which we're going to play you in a second. You can find this audio online. There is some doubt about whether it was the original recording or a dramatisation someone had put together after the event. My take on it is it's probably a dramatisation. It seems too clear and good quality, but either way, it is accurate to the transcript that was logged by Melbourne that day. Have a listen.
The aircraft has just passed over me at least 1,000 feet above. Is there any Air Force aircraft in the vicinity?
No known aircraft in the vicinity.
Seems to be playing some sort of game. He's flying over me.
Can you describe the aircraft?
As it's flying past, it's a long shape. Cannot identify it. It has such speed. It's before me right now, Melbourne.
How large would the object be?
Seems like it's stationary. What it's doing right now is orbiting. The thing is just orbiting on top of me. It's also got a green light and a sort of metallic, like, it's shiny on the outside. That strange aircraft's hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft.
Now, like I said, it's likely a reenactment, but the content is what's important, and that's what was said on the day. I mean, there's more to the original transcript. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. Fred Valentich, the pilot, says, "It's just vanished. Would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Is it military craft?" Melbourne says, "Confirm, the aircraft just vanished?" Fred says, "Say again." Melbourne replies, "Is the aircraft still with you?" Fred says, "It's approaching from the southwest. The engine is rough idling. I've got it set at 23, 24, and the thing is coughing." Melbourne says, "Roger, what are your intentions?" Fred says, "My intentions are to go to King Island." Melbourne, that strange aircraft is hovering on the top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft. The microphone stays open for 17 seconds after that with no speaking from Fred Valentich. Just the sound of an unidentified staccato noise, then the transmission went dead.
That's what I remembered was that staccato noise, yeah. Because some people describe it as metallic, and I think that might be perhaps reading too much into it. But I think the idea was that, yes, it's being sucked inside the craft, yeah.
Yeah, well, he was never seen again. There was an extensive air, land and sea search carried out over the next 5 days. No trace of the plane was found. There was an oil slick that was discovered 18 miles from Fred's destination of King Island on the 21st of October, so just a couple of days afterwards, but that was ruled out. It had no connection with the disappearance. The Bureau of Air Safety Investigations released its findings in May of 1982. They simply stated, "The reason for the disappearance of the aircraft has not been determined, but the outcome was presumed fatal." Now, there are some supporting stuff for the UFO theory. There were witness accounts of unusual lights over the Bass Straits that evening. That's the spot where he was flying, Fred was flying. One of the better-known reports came from the Apollo Bay area. A local man and his 2 nieces says they watched what appeared to be an aircraft lights accompanied by a separate green light. The man reportedly stopped his car because the sight was unusual enough to attract his attention. They watched the lights descending before they disappeared behind trees. Another witness also claimed to see a dish-shaped object emerging from the sea.
So there's quite a number of reports that back up what he's telling aircraft control.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Do you want to hear the skeptic view of this case?
Yeah, I would imagine it has to do with like blacking out or something like this.
Well, I guess the skeptic view, it kind of takes the form of a character assassination, really, of Fred Valentich. And I guess some of the usual explanations we get in these type of cases. Skeptics point out Fred Valentich was just 20 years old, an inexperienced flyer with only 150 hours total flying time. He had twice been rejected by the Australian Air Force. He had limited or no experience of flying at night. 3 previous incidents had also caught the attention of authorities, including a warning for flying into restricted airspace. He was awaiting prosecution for deliberately flying blindly into a cloud. I don't know if you go. Who knew you could get prosecuted for
deliberately flying blindly
Blindly.
into a cloud? Okay.
Another important fact is Valentich was obsessed with UFOs.
Aha. Right.
So skeptics believe he'd never intended to fly to King Island that night. He'd not informed the airport there that he was coming. The theory was he'd gone flying in search of UFOs.
He'd sort of gone on a hunt.
He'd gone on a hunt.
Right.
Okay, here we go. This is something we've heard before, but let's put it out there. A computer search has revealed that Valentich may have seen something unusual in the sky that night, but not a UFO. I'm going to use a word now that begins with V. Venus was extremely bright that night, as well as Mars, Mercury, and the star Antares. So the skeptic theory is Valentich saw these 4 celestial bright objects in the sky, mistaking their triangular pattern for a diamond-shaped craft. Then he becomes preoccupied by the lights above and his desperate desire to see a UFO. So he wasn't paying attention to his own flying. It caused the aircraft to stall and head into a kind of death spiral. And I guess some of the transcript does support this, where Fred describes the aircraft as rough idling, coughing. You know, he said it's coughing, 23, 24, I don't know what that means, but... So who knows? If you're a believer, you're going to go with the theory that Valentich had a close encounter with a UFO and was abducted. If you are going to go the skeptic route, he was the only inexperienced pilot who desperately wanted to see a UFO, mistaking the lights of 3 planets and a star as the lights for an alien craft. He lost control of his aircraft in the excitement and crashed.
Or was trying to cover up a mistake he was about to make by claiming that there was
Right. Yeah.
something, and then in the hope that he wouldn't get further prosecuted.
Yeah, that is another possibility.
Flying blind into a cloud.
Yeah. Well, 5 years after the incident, some aircraft wreckage was discovered that was a partial number match with the Valentich's plane, but the pilot's body has never been found.
It's quite sad, but
Yeah.
it doesn't sound. I don't think that's aliens.
I think it's really gained prominence, that story, because there was an official investigation where that was looked into. I mean, I guess the reports of people seeing strange lights does give it some credibility. And of course, the audio, whether that's a reenactment or not. Rare to have that level of detail, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very rare, yeah.
Well, this episode has been primarily about people who disappear. But you and I, Ben, are also a little obsessed with objects that disappear and often reappear, right?
The JOTTS.
The JOTTS. Bring on the JOTTS. I came across an interesting study published in 2016 by the wonderfully named Tony Jinks, who is a senior lecturer in psychology at Sydney University in Australia. So we're staying in Australia. His report is titled Disappearing Object Phenomenon. It was published and commented on by the Society for Psychical Research. So I'm going to go from their article of it. It is a book as well, so you can read it separately. But I think the SPR did a good job of summarising it. The SPR writes, Tony Jinks has investigated some 385 personal accounts of small objects that have unexpectedly disappeared, reappeared, appeared for the first time, or have been replaced by another similar object. While Disappearing Object Phenomenon is the title of his book, Jinks uses the term coined by Mary Rose Barrington for this phenomenon, namely JOTTS, just one of those things. Concerning such inexplicable experience, I hadn't heard these other phrases, to jottle and jotling. You heard of jottles? Jotling?
No, is that like
That's the behaviour.
Oh, yes, okay. No, I haven't. No, I like it.
I like that, jottling.
Yes.
Jottling behaviour.
You ever jottled? Well,
He's got a really good opening example in his book. He says, one evening in August 2008, Kate drove home after work to a small suburban house situated in a quiet residential street. With her car keys on the same ring as all her other keys, she selected her front door key and opened the door at the same moment that her telephone rang. This is old school time, proper telephone. Knowing who it would be, she left the door open, dropped her bag and ran down the hall to answer the phone before, I guess, the person ran off. After the call, she went back to take the ring of keys out of the door lock and pick up her bag. The bag was there with contents intact, but the ring of keys was not there. She searched and searched in vain, eventually concluding that someone must have entered the porch, snatched the keys, although the street was empty and there seemed to be no one about. And why did they not take the bag? But there you go. Unable to find them, what a pain this is, she was faced with the inconvenient, expensive business of getting a new car key, that's a nightmare, changing the locks of her front door, her back door, her garage, her mailbox, and cutting a new key for her office.
yes, that would have cost a lot of money.
And a lot of effort. Within the year, she moved to a new job in another city and bought and thoroughly renovated an apartment close to the city centre. One evening, she returned home, placed her new set of keys in the hallway drawer as usual, and then went into her bedroom, only to see her old set of keys with the same key ring on her pillow.
Yes.
That is a good
That's
job.
a good job. Yeah, that's fantastic.
He's moved house. That's incredible, isn't it?
It's really good. And that's what I love about them, is that it waits for that perfect moment to just go, ha-ha. Like my favourite one, well, there's lots of favourite ones, but I really like the mischievous ones where there's one where a woman, she goes to the bathroom to take a shower. There's no one else in the house. She puts all of her clothes hanging on the back of the bathroom door. When she comes out of the shower, they're not there. She opens the door and they're on a part of the landing that it's impossible to get to. They're folded up there. Right. So she uses a pole to hoik them down. It's her exact clothes, but they're a size smaller.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So she can't actually put them on again.
Oh, that's
I love that kind of like, why is the universe doing that then?
Well, the second example that Jinx has is a guy called Mark. This is quite a mundane one, but it's interesting. He's sitting on the sofa with his large black TV remote control on a cushion beside him. He it says here, rashly decided to switch television channels while Courtney, his partner, was in the kitchen preparing a snack during an ad break.
Oh, that is rash. Don't do it.
On her return, she was less than pleased, and hurriedly reached for his remote to switch back only to find it wasn't there. Assuming that it must have fallen between the sofa cushions or onto the floor, they searched in vain, turning the sofa upside down, even crawling around on the floor on their hands and knees. Unable to find it, Mark bought another one, but a few weeks later, while Courtney was out, he visited the bathroom and returned only to find this remote had also disappeared, and remained disappeared despite frantic searching. So this is remote number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Later that week, he bought another remote, but a few months later, that disappeared overnight, leaving him completely baffled, as he distinctly remembers that he'd put it in its cradle before going to bed. I love this. He then decided that enough was enough and engaged in the healthy, if inconvenient, exercise of getting up from the sofa and changing channels and volume via the television controls on the TV itself.
So he just gives up.
He gives up after buying, losing 3 remotes within the space of a few months. He just went, well, I'll just change it myself.
And they come back again.
No, that's it.
They just remain gone.
That was a misser. Well, after years of personal investigation into these claims, Jinx decided that these unexpected, inconvenient and unwanted object disappearances, reappearances and so on could not be attributed to forgetfulness, unaware misplacement, faulty memory, inattention blindness, perceptual blindness. There's a whole list of stuff. It goes on and on. Basically, he ruled out any kind of logical explanation for the cases that he looked into, or a lot of the cases.
Right.
What was being repeatedly and independently described seemed to be a genuine phenomena, despite being considered as completely impossible as far as science and everyday common sense is concerned. With the prior research and classification of some 185 cases of the same phenomenon by an author called Barrington as his guide, Jinx decided to submit his much larger database to a thorough statistical, tabled analysis as to the objects most frequently involved. I think this is good, such as jewellery, rings, brooches, necklaces, etc. He found that in order of JOTT activity, the most common behaviours were disappearance and later reappearance of an object. So I guess there's 3 types. Completely disappeared, disappearance and reappearance of the same object, disappearance and appearance of a different object, or just one coming into existence. They were often in the same place, but sometimes elsewhere in the house. The unfamiliar appearance of a new object that could not be accounted for, and the unrecognised similar type of object replacement and sometimes disappearance for good. So these are the kind of order. So the moving and coming back seems to be the most popular. I hadn't really heard this before, but from his study, as a general rule, what? I turned into Pam Ayres then. As a general rule, the sooner an object has been recently handled and then noted as missing, the quicker it returns. Which made me think of, my bottle opener that I've lost.
Yes.
Which was to do with our wedding, and which we took from our wedding. That's not come back.
Oh, it hasn't?
No. We keep talking about it. Weirdly, we were talking about it this week. But no, it hasn't returned. Jinx also classified jottled objects according to their monetary or personal value and experience as to whether the experience was a one-off or repeated over months or years. Males and females seem roughly equally affected overall, but this ratio varied according to the type of object. So women were affected more than men with regard to jewellery, for example. The majority of JOTT experience were adults from their 20s onwards, and as far as Jinx could judge, they were ordinary members of the public who had little or no prior knowledge or interested in parapsychology, no beliefs or practices in magical phenomena, had no idea that this experience had happened to anyone else, were baffled and often emotionally disturbed as to their own state of mind by their experience. So these are not believers in that sense. There was no significant difference found between levels of education or type of career or occupation and the frequency of reported occurrences. It has been assumed that very few, if any, such cases would be reported, but 42 participants in the report, 52%, reported having a jottling experience.
Really? Wow.
This implies that maybe at least half of the adult population have experienced an unexplained object disappearance, reappearance, appearance, or replacement. And those were dismissed in baffled desperation at the time as just one of those things, because there seemed no other explanation at hand. Analysis of JOTT behaviour has demonstrated that several characteristics apply to all objects. They were either there or they were not there in their entirety, and if they reappeared, they were exactly the same as when last seen. They did not fade in or out of existence. If a key had a patch of rust or was slightly bent before disappearance, that is how it was on reappearance. This is in the majority of cases. They were never seen to disappear or reappear, or appear for the first time, or appear as an apparent substitute for the object that was lost. So you don't see it go or you don't see it come back. just suddenly they're just in plain sight. JOTT phenomena never seem to be accompanied by any other paranormal phenomena, such as poltergeist activity. That, I think, is really interesting. It's not part of something else paranormal going on.
Yeah.
Their appearance or disappearance was always noted by one person only, and then, according to social circumstances, confirmed by others. JOTT disappearances was never consciously willed, although reappearance was emotionally sought with variable success. Not with me and my bottle opener.
No.
The appearance of a completely new object or similar replacement object was always a complete surprise. Jinx is careful to point out that these shared characteristics do not prove that JOTT occur beyond all possible doubt, because for proof you need it scientifically observed, right? Pretty hard to test, right, for this. What they demonstrate is after every conceivable normal explanation has been eliminated as inadequate to explain these experiences, then something is occurring that should not occur, and the apparent cannot occur, but despite this, does occur. This being so, we need to look for an explanation which cannot be found within our mainstream scientific understanding of the physical world, because the claimed occurrence of JOTT is denied in principle, let alone in practice. Okay, Ben, we're getting to it. Jinx attempts to explain how this occurs and why it occurs.
Okay, I am all ears.
For all practical purposes, including scientific investigation, we assume that we observe the external world and everything that we can see in its existing in its own three-dimensional domain, completely independent of ourselves. It just is, and we find that we are in consensual agreement with other people. Classic physics is a complete agreement with this view. But quantum physics sees reality very differently. For quantum physics, the essential nature of the universe is considered to exist in an unobservable superposition of probability, states known as a wave function that is collapsed into a physical phenomenon, either as a wave or particle when it interacts with a measuring device, such, he mentions the double slit experiment in this as well. Jinx calls this quantum level of universal reality the pre-physical substrate. So Ben, here is what he thinks happens. In his final chapter, he proposes that our consciousness acts as the mental measuring device that collapses the pre-physical substrate into the world we see around us with all its three-dimensional properties. Observers do not create matter from nothing, but rather imagine the conformation of matter from a quantum soup of vital ingredients, a pre-physical substrate. Presumably, every species performs this according to their type of consciousness. Jinx speculates that some deeply fundamental process determines what the world should look like from these ingredients, and conscious observers are merely carrying out the final act of realization. He suggests that the consensual public space and all objects are held in a steady perpetuation of observation by the mass conscious observers of the past or present. This gets a bit... So he's basically saying in this, in a quite a wordy way, this stuff exists, but like observer theory, almost until we observe it, it doesn't come into our vision, right? Now, he says in public spaces, so if you're in a restaurant, everyone can see a dinner menu because that's what everyone needs to do in that observer theory, right? But when you're on your own, maybe there is a disconnect. So he says the interactional consciousness pre-physical substrate collapses into observed physical continuity that is much weaker than when sustained by mass consciousness. So if you're on your own, it's much harder to keep the objects in your vision, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Sometimes for unknown reasons, possibly through unconscious motivational levels, the conscious support that maintains a particular object in observed reality weakens and an object disappears from our personal reality back into the physical substrate. So back into, I don't know, like the Schrodinger's cat box. We don't know. And this is what creates the JOTT experience. So a bit like the dual slit experiment, this glass that I've got in front of me, for some reason, sometimes I can't figure it to be there anymore. So it disappears and then comes back. So the jotted object that has disappeared from everyone's observation, it hasn't been teleported anywhere. It just no longer is.
Right, it's all down to the observer.
Yes. Changes may reverse this and the object reappears to its owner again as it once was.
That, I've never heard that, but that makes more sense than anything else. Yes, I love that.
He also says sometimes objects disappear permanently, as Mark's TV remote seems to have done, but maybe they have reappeared elsewhere.
Yeah.
Or I guess you could even take that further in another reality. It is fine. This is really interesting as well. This is absolutely fascinating. In his final chapter, Jinx also makes the unexpected revelation that he is subject to a JOTT experience every few months since his interest in the subject. After he realised that there was no normal explanation for their occurrences, he gives 3 examples. He said, suffering from a rib injury, he was determined to play cricket the following weekend and practice with the bat during the week. But he did not possess a bat, and he always borrows one from the team kit. Returning home at 3 p.m. that Saturday afternoon after watching his team play, he remembered that he had a junior bat somewhere in the garage under loads of unsorted junk, but decided to look for it another time. At 5 p.m. he locked the house and with his family went to join a friend for a meal, returning home by car at 9 p.m. He unlocked the door as it was first in. When he switched on the lounge light, he saw the junior bat leaning against the bookcase. It was certainly not there when he went out, and his family had definitely not looked for it. This, he suggests, was an appearance JOTT occasioned by his intention to find the practicing bat. One Wednesday evening, he noticed that his wallet was missing from where he usually put it in a drawer with his glasses and keys. Sometimes he put it on the kitchen counter or the dresser or in a front zip of his work bag, or beside his bed, but he was in none of these places, and he searched the house in vain, both then and during the Thursday when he was working from home. He cancelled his credit and debit cards on Friday, drove into town to get a new driver's licence. He said Friday night is sports nights for his boys, so as this can get rather tense, he was in the habit of chewing gum to relieve parental stress. Reaching up into the overhead cupboard, he took out some gum packets and then turned to clear up the kitchen counter when he heard his wife utter a gasp of surprise. She had opened the cupboard door a few seconds later to take some gum packets as well, and there on the shelf above the gum was his wallet. He could not have missed seeing it when he looked in because it was large, fat black leather wallet and the cupboard was white.
That's why I love these stories.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
He said it must have reappeared back into human observation in the few seconds between the 2 opening of the cupboard. And then early one Saturday morning, he was repairing his front fence. This is interesting as well. Intending to replace a section with new wire netting after first attaching new strained wire between the posts, for which he had bought 2 new rolls, now on the ground ready for use. He knew he had a used half roll somewhere in the garage, but had not bothered to look for it. So yeah, he's like, oh, I've got some in the garage. No, I'll just buy some new. We've all been there, right?
Absolutely.
During the task, he stopped to chat to a neighbour, being only some 10 steps away and in full view of the fencing area. On his return, he found both the shiny new rolls and the somewhat rusty half roll alongside them, which he eventually found he needed to complete the task as there was not enough. That is incredible.
That is fantastic.
That is incredible.
That is such a manifestation.
I'd never heard
or
thought of that. We say about it made me think of that saying we often say: the more you look at the paranormal, the more it looks back at you. But if it is this kind of almost quantum observer theory kind of connection, that makes complete logical sense, doesn't it? The more you think like him, researching JOTTS, he has 3 within a few months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
no,
he's
absolutely.
thinking about how it works.
I don't know what to say. I mean, that is just those are wonderful stories, and it's a lovely idea.
Yeah.
I wonder if it'll happen to us.
When I was reading this and putting this together, or just reading that bit, I did really kind of go, come on, maybe I can will my bottle opener back into existence.
That'd be amazing. And it appears in your shoe or something.
Yeah, just, I don't care where it appears, as long as I find it. Yeah, we'll see. Well, that's some really good cases, I think. I mean, obviously there is a believer and skeptic side, but that JOTT theory, I've been thinking about that a lot. I might have to get his book and read the whole thing rather than the summary in the SPR. But good work from the SPR as well.
Yeah. That was very good indeed.
Well, I know, Ben, you're a little obsessed with the similarities between alien abductions and fairy encounters.
Yes.
Well, on the X Group, I'm going to look into some folklore cases of people who disappeared off with the fairies.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so come and join us for that.
Next week, I will be looking at some very unusual poltergeist cases.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, not your normal run-of-the-mill.
Lovely.
So I will see you for that.
All right, we will see you next week for the quantum mechanics.
See you then.
Thanks
Goodbye.
for listening. Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?